this madness? I'd rather kiss my dog than you.
Everyone laughed as her husband said, "I'd rather kiss my dog than kiss you." At the company Valentine party, unaware she is the mysterious billionaire CEO, what she did next shattered his world. Victoria Ashford stepped onto the dance floor of the Henderson and Associates Valentine party, her hand reaching for her husband James as the music slowed to a romantic melody. "Dance with me," she whispered, moving closer, her heart hoping this moment might bridge the distance that had grown between them over the past 3 months. His body stiffened under her touch, his smile freezing into something unrecognizable. She leaned toward him for a kiss, her eyes closing, her lips parting, and his fingers reached for his mask. "I'd rather kiss my dog than kiss you," he said, ripping the mask off as she stood there frozen, her lips still puckered from the attempted kiss that would never land. Richard from accounting threw his head back first, his laughter booming across the conference room. Susan from marketing joined in, her giggles spilling between her fingers. Everyone laughed as her husband said those words, their phones lifting into the air, 70 screens glowing as they recorded. The moment James pushed her shoulder, creating distance like she carried something contagious. "I told you not to come here," he said, his voice loud enough for the entire room to hear, loud enough to turn this Valentine party at Henderson and Associates into her public execution. "You're embarrassing me." He turned away before she could respond, his hand shooting out to grab another woman, beautiful, confident, wearing a red dress that cost more than Victoria's entire outfit. He pulled her into the space his wife still occupied, their bodies colliding as his mouth crashed against hers, with a hunger that answered every question about the past 3 months of excuses. The kiss stretched on, passionate and deliberate, his hands sliding down the red dress while cameras flashed and colleagues cheered and the DJ turned up the music like this was part of the entertainment. Victoria's legs finally remembered how to move. She walked away from the circle of laughter, her heels clicking against marble as she passed tables decorated with hearts and roses. The back row sat empty, and she collapsed into a chair, her purse landing heavy on her lap. James kept dancing with his mistress, kept laughing with Richard, kept accepting congratulations from men who thought humiliation was strength. Not a single person in that room knew the mysterious billionaire CEO they'd gathered to meet was the woman James humiliated, comparing her to a dog. Would Victoria reveal her identity and destroy everyone who'd laughed? Would James discover too late that the wife he'd humiliated for being unsuccessful actually owned everything he'd worked for? Would the company survive what came next? And could a woman who'd hidden her power for love ever forgive the man who'd proven he never deserved it? In this story, you'll learn the cost of taking someone for granted, the weight of consequences when respect dies, and the importance of treating people with dignity. Before we continue, kindly hit the subscribe button and tell us where you are watching from. 3 years earlier, Victoria had been walking through Central Park on a crisp autumn afternoon, her mind occupied with quarterly reports from the tech empire she'd built, in silence while the world remained oblivious to her name. She didn't see the uneven pavement. Her heel caught and the world tilted violently sideways. Arms caught her before she hit the ground, strong, steady, belonging to a stranger whose blue eyes held more kindness than she'd seen in months of boardroom meetings. "You all right?" His voice carried genuine concern. "Yes, thank you." Victoria steadied herself, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. "I should have been watching where I was going." "Blake Maxwell." He extended his hand, and when she took it, he held on just a moment longer than necessary. "Victoria." Something in his expression shifted, a flicker of pain that passed so quickly she almost missed it. "Just Victoria? No last name?" "Just Victoria works fine." They should have parted ways then. Two strangers, a near accident, a polite exchange. Instead, Blake gestured toward a nearby bench. "Can I buy you coffee? I know there's no coffee shop right here, but there's one down the path, and I promise I'm not a serial killer or anything creepy like that." His nervous rambling made her smile. "Coffee sounds nice." 3 hours dissolved on a park bench that smelled like rain and old wood. Blake talked and Victoria listened, watching this stranger unspool his life like thread from a damaged spool. "My family used to be somebody." His voice cracked on the word used. "Maxwell Industries, my grandfather built it from nothing. My father expanded it, and I—" He stared at hands that trembled slightly. "I watched it crumble. Bankruptcy doesn't just take your money, it takes your identity. My mother won't leave the apartment. My father can't look anyone in the eye. My siblings blame each other, and I don't know who we are anymore without it." Tears tracked down his face, and he didn't bother hiding them. Victoria's chest constricted. This man, this beautiful, broken man, was crying in front of a stranger because he had nowhere else to put his pain. "I'm a waitress," she heard herself say, the lie forming without permission. "I know about struggling, about wondering if tomorrow will be better or just another version of today." Blake looked at her like she'd handed him oxygen in a suffocating room. "You understand." And somehow, despite the lie, she did. They met the next day, and the next. Coffee became lunch, became dinner, became walks that stretched into darkness because neither wanted the conversation to end. 6 months evaporated like morning mist. "I want you to meet my family," Blake said one evening, his hand warm in hers. The Maxwell apartment smelled like cheap detergent and desperation, paint peeled from walls that had probably once held expensive art. Furniture sagged with the weight of better days. Blake's mother opened, the door wearing a smile that looked painful, like muscles remembering how to form expressions they'd abandoned. "You must be Victoria." She pulled her into a hug that felt genuine. "Blake hasn't stopped talking about you." His father shook her hand with both of his eyes grateful. His sister offered tea in mismatched cups. His brother cleared space on a threadbare couch. They were kind because they had nothing left to hide behind. Bankruptcy had stripped away pretension, leaving only people trying to survive. Victoria's heart broke watching them. The wedding happened in a chapel that charged by the hour. Blake wore his father's old suit, altered to fit. Victoria wore white from a consignment shop, her actual family sitting in the back wearing Walmart clothes instead of designer labels, driving rental cars instead of luxury vehicles, playing along with the charade their daughter had constructed. 1 month later, Blake exploded through their apartment door at 7 in the morning, still wearing yesterday's clothes, waving papers that shook in his trembling hands. "Victoria! Victoria! Wake up!" She stumbled from the bedroom, heart racing, prepared for disaster. "An investor," Blake gasped, tears streaming down his face. "Anonymous. They want to invest $100 million. $100 million in our company. They believe in us. Someone believes in us." He lifted her off the ground, spinning her around their tiny living room, laughing and crying simultaneously. "We're saved. The company, my family, everything. We're saved." Victoria wrapped her arms around his neck, feeling her laptop in the bedroom closet, still warm from the video conference, where she'd approved the wire transfer 30 minutes ago. "That's incredible," she whispered into his ear. "I'm so happy for you." "For us," Blake corrected, setting her down, cupping her face in his hands. "I swear to you, Victoria, I swear on everything I am, this won't change me, this won't change us. I'll never forget what it felt like to have nothing. I'll never become the kind of person who looks down on others because of money. Never." His eyes held such conviction, such absolute certainty. Victoria kissed him, tasting salt from his tears, believing every word. Within 6 months, the Maxwell Company stabilized. Contracts appeared, all facilitated through Victoria's connections, though nobody questioned their origin. Investors showed interest from her network, though none revealed the source. Revenue climbed month after month, built on foundations Victoria constructed in shadows while playing grateful wife at family dinners. The Maxwells celebrated each victory like divine intervention, never investigating the timing, never questioning the miraculous turn of fortune. By the end of year 1, they'd moved from that cramped apartment to a house with actual rooms. Blake's mother started leaving home again. His father walked with his shoulders back. His siblings spoke to each other without anger threading through every word. They were happy. Victoria had given them that. Then year 2 arrived, and with it, the transformation she'd feared. "Victoria, dear," Blake's mother examined her dress at a family dinner, nose wrinkling slightly. "That's looking a bit worn, isn't it? Surely Blake can afford to buy you something fresher." The comment landed like a pebble. Small, easy to ignore. But pebbles accumulate. Blake's father stopped asking her opinion during discussions. His sister stopped inviting her to family events unless Blake insisted. His brother started introducing her as Blake's wife in a tone that suggested he was explaining an unfortunate situation rather than celebrating a relationship. And Blake who had promised, who had sworn, who had looked her in the eyes and vowed money wouldn't change him. Blake started working 16-hour days, started missing dinners, started coming home smelling like perfume that wasn't hers. "I'm building something important," he'd say, when she asked why he was never home. "You wouldn't understand the pressure," he'd say when she mentioned feeling alone. "Not now, Victoria," he'd say when she tried to talk about his family's growing cruelty. By year 3, the man who'd cried on a park bench was gone, replaced by someone who looked like Blake, but acted like a stranger. Until one morning he kissed her forehead with unusual tenderness. "I'm planning something special for your birthday," Blake said, his smile reaching his eyes for the first time in months. "Something you'll never forget, I promise." Victoria's heart, foolish and desperate, lifted with hope. Maybe this was it. Maybe he remembered who they'd been. Maybe love could still win. She had no idea that in 2 weeks, Blake would destroy her in front of 200 people, or that her destruction would be the Maxwell family's last moment of happiness. Victoria's phone buzzed on her nightstand at 11:47 p.m., 3 months after she'd first delivered lunch to the construction site. James, construction, are you awake? Her fingers moved across the screen before her brain fully processed the question. Victoria, yes. James, construction, I need to tell you something. Can we meet tomorrow? Lunch? Victoria, same place? James, construction, same place. She arrived at noon carrying the lunch boxes, her heart hammering in a way that had nothing to do with the walk from her car. James waited at the gate, no hard hat, his hands shoved in his pockets. Hey, he said. Hey. They walked to their lumber pile in silence, the construction noise surrounding them, but somehow distant. James took his lunchbox, set it down unopened, and turned to face her. I'm falling in love with you, he said, the words coming out rushed like he'd been holding them too long. Have been for weeks, maybe from that first day, and I know this is crazy because we've only known each other 3 months, and you probably think I'm insane, but Victoria kissed him, cutting off the spiral of words, her hands finding his face, feeling him smile against her lips. I'm falling in love with you too, she whispered when they broke apart. His smile could have powered the entire construction site. Yeah? Yeah. 6 months later, Victoria sat in her delivery van finishing paperwork when James knocked on the passenger window. She unlocked the door and he climbed in, carrying something small in his closed fist. So I've been thinking, he said, his leg bouncing nervously. About how every morning I wake up wishing you were there. About how every good thing that happens, you're the first person I want to tell. About how I can't imagine my life without you in it. He opened his fist, revealing a ring with a small diamond that caught the afternoon light. Victoria, I know I can't give you much right now, but I swear I'll spend my life trying to give you everything. Will you marry me? Her vision blurred. Yes. They married on a Tuesday at City Hall, James in his one good suit, Victoria in a white dress she'd bought the day before. The witness they'd pulled from the hallway cried more than either of them. You're stuck with me now, James said as they walked down the courthouse steps, his arm around her waist. Good, Victoria replied, and meant it with every fiber of her being. 1 month into their marriage, Victoria sat in her downtown office, the sleek 20th floor space James had never seen, with her phone pressed to her ear. David, Henderson and Associates is hiring management positions. My husband applied last week. And you want me to ensure he gets it, her lawyer said, without him ever knowing I was involved. Anonymous references, everything legitimate about his work ethic and integrity just amplified. Consider it done. 2 weeks later, James exploded through their apartment door at 4 p.m., his face electric with shock and joy. I got it! He grabbed Victoria, spinning her around their tiny living room. Henderson and Associates management position. They said my references were incredible, that multiple people vouched for my integrity. Victoria's arms tightened around his neck, guilt mixing with the pure joy radiating from him. You deserve this. We deserve this. He set her down, his hands cupping her face. Everything's going to be different now. Better. I can finally take care of you properly. The months unfolded like a dream Victoria had stopped believing in. James came home at 6 every evening, stopping at the corner store for flowers that cost $5 but felt priceless. They cooked dinner together, his arms wrapping around her from behind as she stirred pasta, his chin resting on her shoulder. Tell me about your day, he'd say, genuinely interested, genuinely present. They talked for hours on their worn couch, her feet in his lap, his hands absently rubbing her ankles while he shared stories about Henderson's projects and office politics and the future he was building for them. I'm the luckiest man alive, James said one night, pulling her close in bed, his face buried in her hair. Guys at work complain about their wives constantly, and I'm here with you thinking, how did I get this right? How did I find perfection? We found each other, Victoria whispered. 18 months of this. 18 months of coming home to each other, of genuine conversation, of laughter and touching and being seen. 18 perfect months where Victoria almost forgot about the empire she managed in stolen hours, where playing the delivery lady felt less like deception and more like the truth of who she wanted to be. Then month 19 arrived. Victoria stood at the stove stirring pasta at 6:15 p.m., glancing at her phone. No text, no call. At 6:30 she plated dinner for two. At 7 she covered his plate with foil. At 7:45 her phone finally buzzed. James, still at office. Big deadline. Don't wait up. She stared at the message, at the absence of apology, at the assumption she'd just understand. Victoria, I made your favorite. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. James, save it for tomorrow. Victoria ate alone, the sound of her fork against the plate echoing in their small apartment. James came home at 10:30, exhausted, kissing her forehead absently before heading straight to the shower. How was your day? She asked when he emerged. Exhausting. He collapsed on the couch, pulling out his phone. Henderson's pushing hard on the Riverside contract. Want to talk about it? Not really. Work stuff. His thumb scrolled. How were deliveries? Deliveries were fine. Good. But his attention never left the screen. The next evening, 7 became 8. The evening after that, 8 became 9. James's texts shifted from apologies to expectations. Working late, don't. Wait up, 8 at the office. Each message eroding what they'd built. 1 month became 2. 2 became 3. Victoria lay in bed alone on a Tuesday night, listening to the television murmur from the living room, where James had fallen asleep on the couch again. Her phone glowed in the darkness as she pulled up her lawyer's contact. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, her heart hammering with a decision that felt both desperate and necessary. If work was draining him, if stress was stealing him from her, if success was destroying them, then she'd eliminate the problem at its source. She'd give him Henderson and Associates. She'd make him the owner. He could set his own hours, eliminate the pressure, come back to her. Victoria, David, I want to buy Henderson and Associates. The response came within seconds. David Morrison. The entire company? That's a significant acquisition. Yes, I know. Get it done, Victoria said. Victoria set her phone on the nightstand and stared at the ceiling. In the living room, James's snoring competed with the television's late-night infomercials. She closed her eyes and fell asleep, believing grand gestures could restore what distance had destroyed, believing that giving him everything would remind him why he'd once promised her the same. In the living room, James kept snoring, kept existing in a world where his wife was slowly disappearing, kept living the life she'd secretly given him while taking her for granted. 2 weeks later, Victoria's lawyer sat across from her in the downtown office. The acquisition documents spread across the mahogany desk. Henderson and Associates is officially yours, David said. The board has agreed to your terms. What's your timeline for the announcement? Valentine's Day, Victoria replied. February 14th. Tell them I'll do the public appearance and handover that day because I want to gift the company to someone special to me. David made notes. Understood. They'll organize a Valentine's party for the occasion. Over the next 2 weeks, rumors spread through Henderson and Associates like wildfire. The company had been acquired by a mysterious billionaire. The new CEO would reveal herself on Valentine's Day. Everyone speculated about who she was, what she'd change, whether their jobs were safe. 2 weeks later, Victoria sat across from James at their small dining table, watching him scroll through his phone while his dinner grew cold. James, she said softly. His eyes didn't leave the screen. I have a surprise for you for Valentine's Day. His thumb paused mid-scroll. Valentine's Day. He looked up, confusion crossing his face like he'd forgotten the date entirely. That's next week. Yes, I wanted to tell you I have something special planned. James set his phone down, and for a moment, Victoria saw a flicker of the man she'd married. Interest, curiosity, connection. Then his phone buzzed, and his eyes flicked back to the screen. That's nice, babe, but your surprise can wait. The company's organizing a big party for Valentine's Day. Our new CEO is taking over that day. It's a huge deal. Everyone's going to be there. Victoria's heart beat faster. A Valentine's party? That sounds perfect. We can go together. Well, yes, it's a Valentine's party, but... James picked up his phone, his attention already drifting. Not for people like you. The words landed like a physical blow. What do you mean, people like me? Come on, Victoria. It's a corporate event. Executives, management, important clients. You'd be uncomfortable. He said it like he was doing her a favor, protecting her from her own inadequacy. Please don't come and embarrass me. It's better for both of us like that. Victoria's chest tightened, but she kept her voice steady. I understand. Good. James stood, carrying his untouched plate to the sink. I'm exhausted. Going to bed. Valentine's Day morning arrived cold and bright. James left the apartment at 9 a.m., his excitement evident in the way he moved, checking his hair multiple times, adjusting his tie, whistling as he grabbed his keys. Big day, he said to the mirror, not to her. Have a good day, Victoria replied from the bedroom doorway. He left without looking back. Victoria spent the afternoon preparing. At 5 p.m., she stood in front of her closet, pulling out the clearance rack dress she'd purchased specifically for tonight. Cheap fabric, outdated cut, everything designed to blend into the background. She dressed carefully, applied minimal makeup, and stared at her reflection. The billionaire CEO disappeared. The dismissed wife remained. At 6:30 p.m., Victoria walked into Henderson and Associates building. Security barely glanced at her as she entered. The elevator carried her to the 15th floor where red decorations and heart-shaped balloons transformed the ballroom into a Valentine's celebration. 70 people filled the space. Elegant dresses, expensive suits, champagne flowing, laughter echoing off the high ceilings. Victoria accepted a glass from a passing waiter and scanned the crowd. James stood near the center of the dance floor with Richard and a group of executives, his face animated, his laughter genuine in a way it never was at home anymore. Victoria moved through the crowd toward him. The music shifted to a slow song, and she approached, extending her hand. Dance with me. James's entire body went rigid. His smile vanished as he turned and saw her. What are you doing here? His voice was low, tight with barely controlled anger. It's Valentine's Day. I specifically told you not to come. His eyes darted around, checking who was watching. This is my workplace, Victoria. One dance, please. His jaw clenched, but people were watching now, and he forced his expression into something resembling civility. Fine, one dance, then you leave. He took her hand, not gently, and pulled her onto the dance floor. They moved stiffly, mechanically, his body radiating discomfort. Victoria leaned closer, rising on her toes, her eyes closing as she moved toward him for a kiss. Just a simple Valentine's kiss. James's hand shot up, grabbing his mask and ripping it off his face. I'd rather kiss my dog than kiss you. The words cut through the music, through the conversations, through everything. Silence spread outward like a shockwave. Then Richard's laughter exploded, loud, cruel, encouraging. Susan from marketing's giggles followed. Within seconds, everyone laughed, their phones emerging from pockets, screens glowing as they recorded the moment. Victoria stood frozen, her lips still parted, her hand hanging in the air between them. James pushed her shoulder, creating distance, his face twisted with disgust. Then he turned completely away from her, his arm extending sideways, grabbing the wrist of a woman in a red dress, standing just outside the circle. The woman stepped forward with a smile that said she'd been waiting for this moment. James pulled her into the space Victoria still occupied, and their mouths crashed together, passionate, deliberate, hungry. His hands slid down the red dress, while cameras flashed, while colleagues cheered, while the DJ turned the music up. "Finally," someone shouted. "That's how you handle it," Richard bellowed, raising his glass. The kiss continued. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15. James making absolutely certain everyone understood, making absolutely certain his wife saw exactly how much he preferred this other woman. Victoria's legs remembered how to move. She turned away from the spectacle and walked toward the back of the ballroom. Empty chairs sat in shadows. Victoria sat down, her cheap dress blending into the darkness, and stared at the program on the table. Henderson and Associates Valentine celebration, 7:30 p.m. Meet your new CEO. The clock above the exit showed 7:02 p.m. Everything made sense now. The 3 months of distance, the excuses about being exhausted, the late nights. It wasn't about work at all. It was about the woman in the red dress. On the dance floor, James kept holding his mistress close, kept accepting congratulations, kept living in a world that was about to end. Victoria sat in silence, watching the clock tick forward, watching her husband celebrate, waiting. 28 minutes until 7:30. The music played on. James kept dancing, and the woman in the back row sat quietly, waiting for her name to be called. At 7:30, the current CEO of Henderson and Associates walked to the podium at the front of the ballroom. He tapped the microphone twice, and the feedback cut through the music. The DJ lowered the volume. "Good evening, everyone," the CEO's voice carried across the space. "Thank you all for joining us for this very special Valentine's celebration. As you all know, Henderson and Associates was recently acquired, and our new owner has chosen tonight to reveal herself and officially take over leadership. Please join me in welcoming the new owner and CEO of Henderson and Associates, Victoria Sterling Ashford." The name hung in the air. Then chaos erupted. "Wait, what? Did he say Victoria? That's James's—" Victoria stood from her chair in the back row, every head whipped around. She walked down the center aisle, her cheap dress suddenly irrelevant, her posture commanding. The crowd parted, people stumbling backward, their phones emerging, screens glowing. James's face drained of all color. His arm dropped from the woman in red's waist. His champagne glass tilted, forgotten, liquid spilling onto his shoes. Victoria climbed the 3 steps to the podium and took her position behind the microphone. She looked out at 70 frozen faces. "Good evening," she said, her voice steady. "I can see you're all confused. Let me clarify who I am." The ballroom went silent. "My name is Victoria Sterling Ashford, the CEO of Sterling Enterprises, a company that major in real estate, construction acquisitions, and strategic investments worth over $50 billion. Gasps rippled through the crowd. James swayed. "2 months ago, I purchased Henderson and Associates. When I told the board I wanted to announce on Valentine's Day, I said it was because I wanted to gift this company to someone very special to me." Her eyes locked on James. "I bought it as a Valentine's Day gift for my husband." Shocked exclamations exploded. Phones lifted higher. Everyone's attention swung between Victoria and James. "For the past 3 months, my husband has been exhausted, distant. He said work was draining him, that Henderson's was overwhelming. So I thought if James owned this company, the stress would disappear. He could set his own hours, have time for our marriage again." James took a step forward. Victoria. 30 minutes ago, right here on this dance floor, my husband told me he would rather kiss his dog than kiss me. Victoria's eyes swept the crowd. You laughed. You recorded it. You watched him push me away, then grab another woman and kiss her passionately. The silence became suffocating. I bought an entire company to save our marriage. Tonight I discovered our marriage was already dead. Victoria's voice remained calm. James Ashford, you are fired effective immediately. You are also blacklisted from every construction and commercial management firm I have connections with. No, Victoria, please. James pushed through the crowd toward the podium, desperation on his face. I can explain. It was a mistake. Please. Victoria stepped down from the podium, her lawyer David materializing beside her. James reached for her arm. Victoria, please, just listen. She looked down at his hand, then at his face. Remove your hand. I'm begging you. Remove your hand. James released her, tears streaming down his face. Please don't throw away 2 years of marriage. Victoria walked toward the exit without responding. Victoria! James ran after her. You can't do this, please. She stopped at the doors and turned back one final time, her eyes sweeping across the 70 people. Enjoy the rest of your Valentine's party. The doors closed behind her. 3 days later, a knock came at the apartment door at 9 a.m. James opened it, unshaven, still in sweatpants. What? David stood in the hallway holding a manila envelope. Divorce papers from Mrs. Ashford. Please review and sign them. James snatched the envelope and ripped it open. His eyes scanned the pages, his face reddening. This is insane. She wants half of everything I own, the house, the car, my savings. She's a billionaire and she wants half of what I have? David's expression remained neutral. Those are Mrs. Ashford's terms. Well, I want half of what she has. That's how marriage works. Community property. James thrust the papers back. Tell her I'm not signing this. I want my fair share. A judge will see how unfair this is. Very well, we'll see you in court. David tucked the papers into his briefcase and walked away. James slammed the door, fury and desperation mixing together. He'd get a lawyer. He'd fight this. A judge would make her pay. 1 month later, James sat in a courtroom wearing a borrowed suit. His court-appointed lawyer sat beside him, shuffling papers nervously. Across the aisle, Victoria sat in a tailored navy suit. David sat beside her with 3 other lawyers, their briefcases full of documents. The judge entered and everyone stood. Please be seated. The judge opened the file. Ashford versus Ashford. Dissolution of marriage with contested property division. She read in silence for several minutes. Mr. Ashford, you're contesting the property division proposed by your wife. James's lawyer stood. Yes, Your Honor, my client believes the proposed division is unfair. Mrs. Ashford is requesting half of Mr. Ashford's assets, while protecting her own wealth. Mr. Ashford is requesting his fair share of Mrs. Ashford's assets acquired during the marriage. The judge turned to Victoria's side. Counsel? David stood. Your Honor, all documentation proving Mrs. Ashford's wealth predates the marriages submitted in Exhibits A through M. The house, car, and savings account Mr. Ashford claims as his were funded by Mrs. Ashford, as shown in Exhibits N through T. The judge reviewed the documents in silence. Mr. Ashford, did you sign a prenuptial agreement? No, Your Honor. Did you contribute financially to the purchase of the house? James hesitated. I thought the down payment came from our savings. The judge flipped through more pages. What about the car? It's from our savings, too. The judge continued reading, her expression unreadable. Finally, she closed the file. The court finds in favor of Mrs. Ashford. The property division as proposed is granted. Mrs. Ashford will receive the house and half the value of the car and savings account. Mr. Ashford will receive the other half. Mr. Ashford's request for any portion of Mrs. Ashford's personal wealth is denied. Her assets are documented as premarital and legally protected. This marriage is dissolved. Mr. Ashford has 30 days to vacate the property. The gavel came down. We're adjourned. The judge stood and left. Victoria stood up. She looked back once at the man sitting with his head in his hands. Then she walked out and the doors closed behind her. James sat, alone in the empty courtroom, staring at nothing. James stood and walked out into sunshine that felt wrong. Somewhere across the city, Victoria Sterling Ashford returned to her office, to her empire, to her life. Dear viewers, sacrifice without appreciation becomes self-destruction, and that karma's timing is always perfect. When love turns to betrayal, dignity becomes your crown. What lessons did you take from Victoria's story? If you were in her shoes, what would you have done differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more captivating stories that entertain, educate, and inspire.